I wanted to start today just by really getting into this space of remembering how powerful your words are, the soul connection behind them, the vibration, the feeling, the the messages that we share through time for impact, for sharing your wisdom, creating your legacy, and really leaving your legacy for I think and through time. And I think that it is just incredibly powerful. And so, your words are a message in a bottle sent straight to someone's soul, and we don't know the impact that we may have with our story, our wisdom, our writing, our journey. And so, welcome to First Chapter Breakthrough. This is really intentional, and it is all about a soul-led writing activation because the world needs your story. And of course, I can't get, okay, here we go. So I am Sheri Elle Brown. I actually have a doctorate in psychology, and I am an abundance mindset mentor and an intuitive empowerment coach. And I really focus on helping my clients, my people, my students get into the flow of whatever it is that they want to create in a really powerful way. So, and as I mentioned when we first got on this Zoom call, I have been, I think one of my biggest dreams in life, one of my soul's calling has always been to write. And so over time, and I wanted to do it forever and ever and ever. And it kind of, I want to say by the time, and I was always writing and doing guided writing, but for sure, by my early 40s, I knew like I have got to just sit down, get some good old butt glue, and get into a chair. And I wrote my first novel sitting actually in a lazy boy recliner. And Orion was brilliant and amazing. And he was the one who helped me get into that flow and self-publish. And 6 novels later, I feel really proud of the work that I've done. And so that's kind of my journey. And a little bit about ZenFlow. It really is a process where we are integrating our beautiful masculine and feminine energies in a really powerful way for connection with source, the clarity that we need to move forward, to focus and create momentum, and then actually entangle with that masculine energy, that beautiful, fiery masculine energy, and take aligned action to bring whatever creative download that we have to life. So that's a little bit about me. And Orion, do you want to share your beautiful story?
Sure, I can do that. Um, Long story short, I growing up always wanted to be a writer. Um, but a lot of people, outside of my parents, they were always supportive of whatever I wanted to do. But outside of that, most of the adults in my life were always kind of telling me, like, yeah, you can't really be a writer. Like, no, it's hard to be a writer. It's hard to find a publisher. You know, writing a book is hard. You'll never make any money. That's the classic one. You'll never make any money doing it. Why would you do that? Um, and I got all the way, I was 2 semesters short of graduating in a finance degree, and I was miserable. And I decided I wanted to do something different, and I needed to write. So I changed my major and became a journalism major. And I decided that I was gonna write. Hang on. And so I just started writing as soon as I graduated, and I wrote and wrote and wrote. And, to this point, I've written 30 novels. And it has been incredible to be able to, most of my stuff is, it's all fiction, but a lot of what I write has my characters and sort of themes, and it's all pulled from my life. right? So it's been really great to be able to share those stories with people. And, even though they are more fictionalized works, they've had a really great impact on people. And I've had a lot of people, you know, send me emails and write to me and, just to share how much my stories have helped them. So it's been really rewarding in a lot of ways. So, if I can help people um, have that same sort of feeling and experience that I had, that's what I really want to do too, because it's really amazing to be able to share, what's going on in your mind and in your soul with other people. And writing's a great way to do that.
I agree. And I do want to say, and I want to clarify, and it probably will pop up again as we go through these slides. My first novel really was a flowy, fictionalized memoir of my life and my upbringing and my journey and my wisdom and how I, grew and reflected and became as a result of it. And I think, and I'm sure that this probably will come up again because there's more than one way to write your story. And so I really do think that that matters. And for me, I had kind of moved past and healed from my past and, was felt like phenomenal transformation and forgiveness and all of that good stuff. And so for me, it really what I wanted to tell a story with other characters and settings and circumstances to kind of like pull it all together. But the main character in that first novel of mine was definitely me. And I'm bringing that up, like I said, because I do think that there are a lot of different ways that we can express ourselves and get our stories out into the world and share our wisdom and our journey and our passion. So today in this masterclass, you will discover how to reconnect with your story and your soul's message and what's really been blocking your writing. And it's not just time, a soulful strategy to start your first chapter with ease and flow, how to stop overthinking and start receiving the message your book wants to share. And then, of course, we will invite you into our next step if you're ready to step inside Soul to Page and work with us. So take a moment. What if your words are someone else's awakening? So I invite you to close your eyes for about 30 seconds and breathe into your heart. You know that there is a message already living inside of you. And so I invite you to feel into the message that your soul is ready to share. What bubbles up? A feeling, a phrase, a memory. In your stillness, let it speak, let it rise. You don't have to capture it just yet. Just feel it. Breathe into it. Let's tune in. Listen to any messages. And now, if you feel called, I invite you to jot something down, a word, a memory, a moment. Doesn't have to be your first chapter. It's just your first connection. What is your soul whispering to you in this moment? We have about 1 more minute. How's everyone doing? We can go another minute. I can see you're all very focused. Does anybody have any feeling about sharing what
Well,
emerged?
may I speak?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to share with you, firstly, thank you so much for the beautiful glyph you shared the other day. I have been, was particularly this morning before this, I was spending some time with it and connecting with the Star Mothers, and it told me it's a key, and it actually does look like a key that you can put into a lot. The first time I saw it, I said to my husband, he used to play trumpet, trumpet, but I said, it looks like a trumpet because it has those little things you push. But then I looked at it this morning and it said, I am the key to opening the Lemurian Akash. So I was excited about that. And I just want to thank you and share that with you.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It probably was something that Amber must have shared because she's the queen of all things Lemurian, I
Yeah,
imagine.
she
Yeah.
did. Thank you, Amber, too.
That's really beautiful. And it's amazing to me. I was listening to, I've been listening to a lot of physicists lately talking about this movement into fifth dimensional energy and the nature of our human consciousness. And we're just all collectively stepping into this time where I think that it absolutely matters for us now more than ever to share our wisdom and share our story in a really powerful way. Would
I could
anybody
read a
else
little
like to
bit.
share? Yeah,
I could read
absolutely.
okay. I was writing about expansion and kind of like the experience of what it feels like to have to feel like nirvana, almost like what unconditional loving bliss feels like for me, and just the expansion beyond the idea of expanding and kind of to find that place of silence that just is, that the isness and where there's no one there to hear because my entire ego idea of construct of myself is completely dissolved and all subjective meaning of words. And I'm just living in a dimension where form as I presently know it holds no bearing. And the only thing that is me. And somehow, some way, I've become this underlying presence of everything. And there is no need to become this underlying presence because I've always been this underlying presence. And then it's like, how do you know you're everything in this moment? And then it was like, because you'll experience the omnis. And what does that feel like when you know that you're everything, when you're feeling everything, and that perpetuity of everything happening right now outside of the box of space and time? And what does that feel like? Kind of and I invited myself to feel what it feels like. And like whoever I was reading it in that moment to have that experience also. That was what I wrote.
It's so beautiful. It's so powerful.
Well, I can
Really, I've never
certainly.
really shared my writing with anybody, let alone really read it out loud.
How did it
So
feel?
I think I'm like kind of shaking a little bit actually inside.
In a really beautiful, big, powerful way?
I think so. I guess yeah, it feels pretty good. You know, the
High
omnis, I
vibe.
underlined and starred the omnis, you know?
It's beautiful. I love that. I love that opening.
Oh, good.
May I say, Ryan, when you were reading that, I was definitely feeling this huge energy, this beautiful love energy. So thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Would anyone else like to share?
Yes, actually, first off, Ryan, I think that's wonderful because that really goes into the card that Sheri pulled today about speaking your truth and really releasing the voice, right?
Mm.
And we all know her story. I actually just asked to I'm currently writing a book. I have been for a while. I'm one of these, yeah, okay, I'll get it done this year. And then it goes on. But my title is The Displaced Soul, and it's really the story about the original title was going to be Oops, I'm in the Wrong Body. And because all my life I felt that I wasn't in the right space, even as a child, I actually would tell my mom, I don't think I'm supposed to be here. I think I'm supposed to be somewhere else and with another family. And she would shush me off. And I grew up with a family of 9 siblings. So it was a very busy, active household. And so I don't know if that was part of it because I liked my silent places, right? When I would play by myself a lot. But when I asked to tap in just with this process, what experience, and it really brought me about living outside of my body most of my life. And I just wrote soul whispers. So what is my soul whispering? And the soul whisper of a creative entrepreneur. And then I wrote down of an unhealthy body, of an artist, of a medium, and of someone who's lived outside their body, and sort of examining what does all that mean. And then I went to the experience I had probably about 10 years ago with a shaman who actually, this is a really weird description because I don't tell a lot of people this, where she actually reached through my heart etherically and pulled my soul on the other side, brought it back into my heart, and it was like this etheric snap. And when she did that, it it just almost like it revealed all the reasons why I felt like I was outside, like I wasn't living in my body. And then, really awakened me to I'd already discovered my psychic artistry, but it really helped me understand what it was about. And so that's sort of what I would share today is, sometimes I worry about, I think part of the resistance in writing was because I'm not sure I want to write it under my own name because of having such a large family and people that know you and they don't really know you. They just think they know you, but do I want to put all that out in a book, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. But thank you, Sheri and Orion, for hosting this. And I'm going to jump off. I'll just kind of pop off in a bit because I have a coaching call with a client in a bit. So But thank you.
You're so welcome. And I know that when I wrote my novel slash memoir for my first book, I definitely coming also from a large family, and there was a lot going on that I wasn't really exactly, I I think that there is always a choice and a very creative way to talk about your lifetime of experiences. And, you can always change names or sort of subtly fictionalize little bits here and there. I think that there are absolutely ways around it. And I think the other bigger picture could be sharing your wisdom through a lens of love and compassion and forgiveness. And I mean, you and I have been talking about this for years, where it really is a matter of you get to a certain point in your life and you don't have any attachment to any negativity surrounding a relationship anyway, right? They're already healed. And so I do think that there is a way to not worry about how how you may affect someone who knows you, or in a way where you can step in and feel good about being seen in your heart-centered way. If
Thank
that
you.
makes sense.
Yeah, thanks.
I don't know why my slides are going backward.
Make sure you're awake.
Da, 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 da. We all know that we don't have time to write. We tell ourselves that we do not have time to write. And I know, I mean, for sure. And when we're moving with the flow of universal forces and, the metaverse, we know that things all come to fruition in their own sweet, beautiful, perfect timing. But and I know that for me, I don't believe I could have written my first book before I was in my 40s, before I kind of processed all the things that I needed to process and get through, so I could really write it with a very powerful, beautiful, objective lens with a higher vibration of love and forgiveness and understanding and the bigger picture at 30,000 feet and beyond that. But I do want to remind everyone that you don't need more time. You just need to give yourself permission, because when we get past that block of time, that perceived block of time, usually there's something underneath in that mindset space that's really holding us back. And so I just wanted to share with you some of the mindset blocks. And, Lois, you just mentioned one, and I absolutely do think that it is probably right here. Yes, fear of being seen. So it could be your fear of not being good enough, or your fear of starting and not finishing. I would love to know how many of you have started writing again and again and again, and all of your writing is just kind of hanging out in a notepad, in a separate Word document, over and over and over and over again, right? So we all know this idea of finishing. And I do want to say this. Sometimes I think that fear of not finishing, we're creating a mountain out of a little baby molehill, right? Where we can begin to ask ourselves, well, what happens if I finish? What if it's not and it kind of goes into and dovetails into these other mindset blocks, the pressure to get it right, perfectionism disguised as productivity, the emotional weight around your story. What if you can't find the words to describe the bigness of what it is that you are feeling? Or you may have doubts around your voice, or old beliefs that are still whispering to you, who am I to write a book? And so I think that there are mindset blocks that can begin to feel heavy and hold you back. And so my invitation to you, and I know that you all know this, is to move out of that intellectual fourth dimensional energy, move into that beautiful 5D energy, that creative, high vibration energy of light and love that the human collective is all beginning to experience right now, and really begin to feel like you can release anything that may be holding you back. And I would love if any one of you would like to share anything that might be blocking you right now, that you feel ready to kind of just, rather than transform, just transmute that block into energy and just release it. So is anyone feeling any block, anything that you want to share that we can talk about? Amber?
I'll go
Okay, go.
first. I always run into the blank page, and I'm really good with a list. And when I was working with a friend of mine, and we would do webinars and actual physical events, I would just freeze at the blank page. But if he would send me an outline, then I was great. Then I could fill in the blanks. So that, I wouldn't do that. I mean, that's not the purpose of your writing yourself, is to, have someone else write an outline for you. But that's what stops me. And also, as you're speaking, Sheri, and I really love that meditation. It was so nice to have someone else lead a meditation for me. That I feel a responsibility to the audience, to the reader, to tell a really good story, in a captivating way with, all of that. So I have a very high expectation of myself. And I think that also stops me. And I just realized that. So thank you for being the space that birthed into.
You're welcome. And, I think that there is absolutely, I don't think, I know there is a very distinct relationship between perfectionism and procrastination. And so, kind of keep that sort of like in the back corner of your mind, what we're not here to be perfect. And
Yeah.
the beautiful thing about when we tune in to our creative downloads is, and I know that this sounds really simplistic, you can always write another book, right? So it's not, we don't have to write one thing, right? Our creative endeavors and our creative downloads are constantly coming to us. And I definitely know the feeling when I was mentioning, how many of you have notebooks filled with writing or Word documents filled with writing. Or for me, if I happen to have a creative download at 3 a.m., I'll pop them into the notes section of my phone. And so where was I going with that? I'm just wondering. I don't know where Orion went.
Here,
He's there.
right
Oh,
here.
there you are. Oh, oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay, wait, let me get back on track. I don't want to lose this thought. I think that it matters. I'm in the middle of writing my very first non-fictional book, all about multidimensional mindset and stepping into, this idea of like our collective consciousness. And it's kind of like a blend of science and spirituality, really, essentially kind of what I was alluding to earlier about all the physicists that I'm listening to right now in the quantum field. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it's a nonfiction book, but I'm a storyteller at heart. And so because of that, I really have to weave my storytelling and my experiences into it. And going back to what you were saying, Amber, how many experiences do we all have, especially being connected to source, creative by default? We all know that we're here for a different reason in terms of like feeling really called to honor our sacred souls and expressing ourselves in a really profound way to help uplift others and share our wisdom. I can tell you I have a million stories, and I'm sure you all do. How do you whittle that down into your first chapter? And you will probably, and I'm not saying this in a weird way, it's almost as though tuning in and leaning into one thing that helps you feel really, really good and that whole body yes in that moment. And if you can stick to it, you'll get into that creative flow and it will lead to chapter 2. It will lead to chapter 3, chapter 4, or 5, or your second book, or a series, right? And I mean, really, there's no way. I'm very sure if I reread my first novel now, I would be like, oh my God, why did I share that? Right? So, right, the writing process is definitely a journey. And I think we put an awful lot of pressure on ourselves to feel like we've got to get it right this time around exactly the way that we imagine it. And that is really not how the creative process works at all. And I think it really begins to be important to have compassion for ourselves while we're writing and to know what a beautiful journey to think that you can actually be a published author over and over and over again and share your new insight and wisdom again and again and again. I hope that that makes sense. I know the feeling of wanting to put all of the weight into my new book all about multidimensional mindset and this new consciousness. And I definitely know, like, oh my God. And I'm sure today after this call, I'm going to go back through my book and I'll be like, these are the stories I decided to share. So, right, it's really about being in flow. It's really about having compassion for ourselves as we're writing and write something rather than staring at that blank page. Because the beautiful thing is that you can write chapter 1, get into the flow of chapter 2 and 3 and 4, and then always return back to chapter 1. I really believe in creating a title and a summary for a book after it is all written, because then you have a much better idea of where you're going. And I think even chapter 1 could be included in that. Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it all helps.
I can
It
I could
all.
relate with so much of what you guys are saying, between the maladaptive perfectionism of just like constantly beating myself to a million pieces about not putting the work out or not being able to maybe organize the work into some sort of linear form. I have actually no problem writing. I write every day, just copious amounts. But then when I'm done, I don't want to do the editing process. I don't want to put the whole thing together. And I cannot talk myself into editing. I have tried every single process. I've like thought of everything in terms of like, I cannot force myself to, I'm trying to force myself to do this and it's not working. I just want to sit down and write new stuff every day. I don't want to look at the stuff I wrote. I don't want to go back through it. I don't want to organize it. The whole thing feels like a mess all the time. It's a mountain of books and journals and notebooks, like you were saying. And I feel like there's something real in there. Man, is there something effing real in these words? And I just want to put it out there. And the whole thing is, it's just like, what? I'm just like, how do I deal with all of this stuff? It's like this massive puzzle that I'm like trying to, and then it's like, do I have ADHD? Who am I? am I labeling myself? Who's the I that's labeling myself? And then everything just dissolves into some form of self-inquiry where between every single page, I just dissolve my entire ego construct and go back to source. And like, there is no linear story. It's just like one dissolution after one dissolution, it feels like.
And
Sorry,
no,
that was
you're great.
emotional,
I
but
love that. I love
not
that
like you guys.
rant. I love that rant because I definitely hear myself saying, oh my God, I'm stuck in this pile of words, right? It's like a pile of words. And so,
These are
right.
the limiting construct beliefs that we need to just like, who's the one who's limited by these words? Like, why am I plugging myself into all of these broken thought patterns that I know better? I have the awareness to know that I should not be doing this. And yet still, here we are doing these things. Sorry.
Although you're great. And I do have to say, I think for those of us who are really deeply connected to source, and when we are very creative, and I think that you're left-handed. So
Yes.
that's like another piece of the puzzle of logic and, being in that creative space. I think that when we are very tuned in and very creative and we get all of these downloads, I think that it's important to remember our storytelling doesn't have to be linear. Our storytelling can be whatever, however we need to put it out there. And I do want to say this to you just to affirm exactly what you're talking about. I think that it was George Bernard Shaw who said, why do we only have 26 letters in an alphabet? There's no way that a combination of 26 letters can create words that could possibly express what I'm thinking and feeling and intuiting. And so don't forget, our human language is just a tool for us to use to put whatever creative downloads we're getting out there. So I feel what you're saying in terms of this limitation, and it probably has less to do with you and more to do with the consequence of a 26 lettered alphabet creating words that can't possibly really get to the heart of what we're trying to express. But it's kind of the confines. I mean, I know that you all probably know that Esther Hicks in her channels with Abraham has talked about that, and she has made up her own words. And I know with Orion and I, when I was writing my books and we were editing, he would say, Sheri, that's not a word. I'm like, but it needs to be a word. Can it be a word? Let's make that a word. So, I definitely know that feeling, but there's a way for you to channel and bring it in and organize yourself in a way that we could, if you decide to work with us, get into that space and find your flow and really create something powerful, transcending and transmuting what you believe are your limitations, but then also stepping into an organizational framework, playing by the rules of our English language. I hope that that helps. Does that make sense? But I feel you. I definitely feel what you're saying.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it does help me. Yeah, there's hope.
There's hope.
There's hope.
Definitely hope.
Because, it's almost like there's maybe neurodivergent thought processes that kind of may be going on here. And I don't want to label, again, who's the one who's labeling themselves as neurodivergent? It's like a game, but it's like, do you guys feel like you're playing a game, just constantly catching yourself, like trying to, who you're identifying as?
Well, and I think, I mean, I'm way too old to have been labeled as neurodivergent, but I'm sure I have that going on with a couple of other things, Yes, yes. Yeah. And the thing is that you know that you can step outside of your label at any time that you choose. It's just
I actually
another
just
word.
labeled myself like a month and a half ago, but it feels, but yeah, who's the I that labeled themselves? Again,
Right.
just playing games.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Ego, illusion, Maya, construct, cosmic dream. None of this is real. It all feels like sometimes somewhat futile, like what you were saying with the English language. Like, why am I even bothering on some levels in this? Like, it's like reality is just constantly dissolving. All it is now. I should just be. Who
You
am I
could,
writing this for? Everybody's me. Everybody's a
I
mirror version of myself.
I agree, but I do think that there's something really powerful about creating something tangible that lives through time.
What if time doesn't exist either? And time's just a construct too.
Well, time is a construct, but I think that for people that are here in 3D, I think that that's okay. It's okay. You
Is
know,
it
there
though? Is it? Am I just like buying into duality? And when in reality, it's all non-dual. We're all one, and it's just all one thing. And every time I do something else, I'm just confusing myself and dipping myself deeper into the illusion. That's what it feels like with almost most conversations. I don't know what, but who am I having a conversation with? Is this like crazy? Am I going crazy? I'm just teasing, but I'm not used to talking with people who maybe would even be able to understand what I'm coming from, even like in the slightest bit, not even in the slightest.
Well, I think that you just threw out a lot of amazing existential questions. But I think that it's a good thing. I think that it's a good thing. I think that this is all a beautiful pool of writing topics that you can share.
Okay. You think there's a place for this stuff?
I think that there's a place for everything, right? We're all of one mind, so you're communicating with that bigger picture of all that is. Absolutely. There are people that are definitely in that space all the time. Angie, I feel like you've had your hand up for a while. Do you want to jump in?
If you don't mind, I have something to share.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm just laughing with Ryan because we have these conversations back and forth occasionally, and I keep trying to bring him down to, oh, yes, but we incarnated here on this plane to have this 3D physical experience, willingly, and we still have to navigate this, so it's just funny when he's constantly going, but who am I? And it's like, well, who, come back here. In any case, something came up just now that I thought was interesting because since I was a very young child, I always loved learning. And my sister was like a year and a half older than me and, started school before me. And all I wanted to do was go to school. And I just always wanted to learn things. And I've known since I was a very young child, the one and only thing I ever wanted to be was a teacher. And so, of course, when I got to be an adult, I went into the airline industry. So totally off, course. And I worked for American Airlines for 27 years. However, along that time, I know I have always been a teacher. I have children, and I thought that was the most important job I would ever have in my life is I have these children. I have to, be the person that brings them up and all that stuff. And, I'm proud to say I taught them very well. But the interesting thing is that most of my group of friends, as we went into university and stuff like that, most of them did become teachers, certified teachers. And oh my goodness, they just, the concept, if I would say something about, but I am a teacher, I don't get paid for it, and I don't have that piece of paper. And this was just like, no, you're not allowed, like you couldn't come out and be that kind of thing. You couldn't state that and claim that. And I think that kind of did make me, suppress that in a lot of ways. But like I said, I mean, I have taught courses and I've done so many things. I've just never been officially paid for it or anything. In any case, the funny story is I had a health crisis almost 20 years ago in 2006 that basically launched me onto my spiritual path. Because from the minute I was told you have this, and I'm not even going to say it, my first reaction was, no, not playing that game. I'm not doing that. You know, that's fine, but I know I'll figure this out. And so obviously it was a journey where I did have to figure it out, but that basically launched me, as I said, onto my spiritual path because I was asking all these questions. And it became, I say, I just followed the yellow brick road because all the messengers showed up and somebody said, hey, I'm going to this. Do you want to? I just say, okay, okay, okay. You know, started working with energy. So the long story short is one of the messengers said, hey, I'm going to an angel circle. And I was like, okay, whatever. And now Carol, who led that, she's an angel intuitive, is a you know, a very close friend of mine. But throughout that, at the end of these circles, she would always do messages. And I have always known there's a book, and I've been getting this, you know, kind of encouragement or you know, little nudges that, you know, you need to write this book. And at the end of the angel circles, we would often get a gift. And it became a joke. It was often the same group of people. And every time the angels would give me a blank book, a typewriter, you know, it was like, okay, are you going to do it? You know, so, you know, so the group would be like, oh, let's see what they give her this time. You know, and yes, I've got books, you know, journals and all kinds of things all over the place. But my block was always, you know, Carol would also say, well, they want you to write this book about your healing journey, how you got out of that. And I do believe there's value in that, but I didn't want to narrow it to the diagnosis, so to speak, because I think it can have a more global reach. You know, if I say, well, you know, whatever it was, I was diagnosed with that, then it's almost going to say, oh, only those people are going to read this. And I disassociated myself with all that right from the beginning, that I don't want to be. It was funny because my sister said, you know, when they finally told me, and she says, well, at least now you have a name for it and you know what it is. And I said, I don't want a name for anything. You know, whatever that is, I'm not saying, you know, I don't have that, you know. And I would go, you know, visit my various alternative practitioners because I don't follow traditional medicine, and they go, oh, when did you get sick? And I say, I'm not sick. I've got something to deal with, but I'm not sick, you know. And so so that's been part of the block, is that I kind of know I want to empower people to kind of take back their power, but I don't really want to talk about that story. So, you know, that's kind of my confusion.
Well, and I do think my first question would be, before you embarked on your spiritual journey, I'm assuming that it was the impetus behind that had to do with that diagnosis.
Yes.
So did you have that three-dimensional human experience at the very onset that got you into that heart space and mind space of, this is not who I am, and now I'm going on an entirely different path with my own healing journey? So did you have that human moment of what it felt like?
I definitely, absolutely recall a moment where I knew, and I said to myself, this is happening for a reason. I'm learning, I'm supposed to learn something from this.
I love that as an opening line to your chapter 1.
Well, yeah, one of the things I wrote down that came to mind was just say no. Like when you know, and one of my close childhood friends, who's always, all these significant moments in my life, somehow she's always been there. Nobody knew I was in the hospital. I hadn't told anybody, but she showed up. And she, you know, when the doctors came and they said, oh, we need to speak to you, I said, it's okay, she can stay. And when they said, you know, so I said to her, you're the only one that knows what happened, but that's what I said. It's like, no, thank you very much, not doing that. You know, so just say no. But yeah, it definitely launched me on a, I'm going to say, the spiritual fast track, because things happened very, very fast. And eventually, through working with the angels, I had physical experiences of the angels, and oh my God, and it's just like so many things. So it's hard to, to kind of tie that and that together.
And I do think, that's something that we can talk about if you choose to work with us, because it kind of goes back to what I was saying a little bit earlier. Your experiences don't have to be linear. That you can write in a way and weave your stories where you start at a place in time and move forward and then recall, let's say, and I definitely am not insinuating in any way, shape, or form, this is definitely just a working example. You start with where you are right now, the moment you got that diagnosis, and then part of your journey. But then you can, in chapter 3, go back to an earlier part of your childhood or some other experience that may have begun to create that energetic imbalance within you. Do you see what I mean? So you can start in a space, go back to the past, hop into chapter 5 with angels. It doesn't have to be linear. And I think that readers tend to not enjoy a linear progression of a story anyway. I think it's, in my opinion, a little, and Orion, I would love to hear your opinion. I think that I think linear writing can lead to the reader feeling a little bit bored, and I think when Amber interviewed Orion and I for her YouTube video, I was talking about that because my first book, I didn't want it to be first this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. It just doesn't feel like a flowy, lovely way to engage a reader in your story. So you have much more latitude than you think, I believe, creatively, to share your story in a way that you're taking, it kind of goes back to your belief, and I believe that that is true about being a teacher. We're all teachers. You don't need a piece of paper to show that, right? Like, get into that teacher part of your mindset, that creative teacher part, and weave your story in a way that feels really good for you, that feels compelling for you. And then you can decide how much you want to share about your particular diagnosis. You could even say, this story is not about my diagnosis. This is for anyone who feels like they're ready to heal, and this is my journey.
Right. Yeah,
Does that help?
Yes, thank you. Because that is my intention, is to, as I said, uplift and empower. And but I don't want it to be about, let's say I used cancer as an example. If I say, well, I got diagnosed with cancer and then this, it's not about curing cancer. It's about your the journey of empowering yourself and taking charge of your life and doing I mean, I absolutely knew, and in that process, when I said I knew this happened for a reason, I knew in the 2 years prior to that, very significant things happened. My mother died, and I was so angry with her because we had not a good relationship, and I was really mad at her that she checked out. I ended the relationship I was in at that time, and also my best friend of 30 years, that kind of all blew up right at the same time. And literally weeks later, I had symptoms, and I went, yeah, like I knew it was from the emotional, load and so forth. So it was like, okay, this is how this is showing up. But then it was.
I agree. And I know we need to move forward in this class right now, but I do want to say, And we all know this. We are multidimensional beings. And there are a lot of people that can be helped with your words, and you're opening them up to a different way of looking at something, and they may very well be in three-dimensional mode, right? We're all teachers here. And so, right? And so I think part of that human story is what really captures a reader into saying, oh my God, she hears me. I feel like she's writing this book for me. And, and I want to say that in a very different way, right? Like in this multidimensional mindset that I'm talking about with this new nonfiction book of mine, right? It really, right? It's that dance, that beautiful, artistic, creative dance of tuning into our experiences as multidimensional beings. And then the right person will seek you out and will be moved. Does that help before we kind of move on? I just don't want to keep everyone here for
Right,
much
right, I'm
longer
sorry.
than Orion and I
Uh,
promise.
Something. Right, and one of the things I wrote here is that may my words be embedded with the love and vibration that will touch the hearts of all, and the right, when the students are ready, the teacher will appear, kind of thing. So, that it will attract the right readership.
And you know that it will. If you're writing in that vibration that is true for you and authentic for you, the right people will be attracted to you.
I just want to jump in and say something real quick too about that. My most, well, I guess it's a metric, but a commercially successful books that I ever wrote were actually young adult for girls under a pen name, like a female pen name. And I never anticipated that I would get so many emails and messages on social media from young women and their mothers telling me, like, my daughter hates reading, or I hated reading, and then I found your books. And like, they were just sort of silly little stories that I wrote, but they like definitely had a profound impact on a lot of people. Right. Like, I mean, I used to get a lot of messages and emails. It would be, one or two a day, which is, I think, a lot, for a year or two. And so, we have to remember, like, even that, though that was like a silly little story just about, just an entertainment in my mind, that I was writing something to entertain people.
I
like,
thought they were really lovely, by the way. They weren't just silly little stories.
yeah, but, to me, they were sort of silly little stories. But, I think because I cared and tried to write them as well as I could, and craft an entertaining story, it ended up being something that really touched them and helped them, and they related to it, and it made them want to read again or read for the first time. So I think we have to remember, like, it's not it's there's always going to be people out there that are going to find your writing, and it's going to resonate with them. And that's why I think it's one of the important reasons that if you feel like you have that story inside of you, that there's people out there that need to hear it, right? So it's for you to write it as well, but there's also people out there waiting to hear it that need to hear it, just like you need to tell it.
Do you think that framing it like a silly little story to yourself helped you to create the process, as opposed to being like, okay, this is gonna work. Like, I'm gonna like speak from my soul and like from everything I've got and every word that I write, like, by telling yourself, like, you kind of like disarm the like emotional time bomb inside of yourself with
Yeah,
this
That's
for
such
thought
a
sure.
great
process.
question.
And then how do I like, or would somebody like really believe that, almost, it's like one thing to tell myself, okay, you're going to sit and you're going to write yourself a silly little story, Ryan, or whoever I am. And then, like, or the God pretending to be Ryan. And like, but then, how do I stay there?
Well,
Like,
I think that for me, right, that was part of it. It was my first novels that I wrote, and because I was writing as a female, essentially, right, writing a story about a teenage girl from her perspective, right, I was really disassociated from it. So I didn't have to worry about if people would read it and judge me or think something of it, or I didn't have to worry about, you know, trying to convey who I am, right? I could just be, it's almost like you're playing the character of the writer, right?
Do
So
you think that you were channeling a teenage girl or something like that when you were writing those books, or possibly that you were like living simultaneous parallel lives as that
I
teenage
don't see
girl
why
while
not.
you
I
were
mean,
writing
anything's
those books under that,
possible.
or that you were possibly with your words creating some sort of like side parallel realities where that girl actually exists?
Well, that sounds like a book right there.
For you, yeah, maybe.
But
Yeah.
I agree. These are such great questions. And I don't want, of all people, the Gemini girl who doesn't even believe in the construct of time. Like, I'm just watching the clock here a little bit. But these are all amazing questions. And I think it definitely speaks to the idea of, if we believe that we're writing with this deep, heavy gravity, this one soul fueled, amazing one-time tome of what we're creating, we're putting a phenomenal amount of pressure on ourselves as a writer. And so I do think probably, like, maybe I never would have written my first novel slash memoir had I written it completely from that heavy space of all of the things that I experienced early on in my life and childhood. And I needed to create a different way to write it so those characters could come to life. And I was not the main girl, even though I was. I think it's a really great question. And I think, you know, it's definitely finding your voice in a way that really gets you into flow absolutely matters. And especially in terms of getting that first book done and just taking that pressure off of yourself.
Yeah, because it could be a lot of like all or nothing thinking, kind of
Yep.
black and white. It's got to be now, it's got to be everything, or it's like, or it's silly, you know, like maybe I've attached belief systems to the like the thought that if it's not that, it's going to be not worth it or worthy, maybe, you
Right,
know?
exactly. And that's the beautiful thing. You can always write another book. And I do, all or nothing thinking is absolutely like a massive energetic block to the creative process and to the process and the law of attraction, right? That all or nothing thinking, you know, we're just channels for whatever source is asking us to bring through for the collective. And we can do it again and again and again. It doesn't have to be the one thing. Nothing is the one thing.
Or everything is the one thing.
Exactly.
Or you become nothing and then you realize that you were everything the entire time.
Right. And
That's
so,
the game.
and
That's why I
right. And
keep
so then
dissolving my
you can,
ego construct, because from my perspective, according to Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta Maharaj, and all the ascended masters, that any type of attachment to my ego construct is just going to lead to some sort of suffering. And that the only true path to liberation is in the recognition of myself as God, and that everybody is God, and that everything is God, and maybe not the word God, but let's say divine, or that energy of that omni energy, and that, you know, I mean, right? I mean, isn't this like there's different echelons of the game, but isn't this like where I should? I mean, there's no who's the me that should be doing this or should be doing that, but this feels
right.
like
And you
where I
know,
should be focused.
right. And it can be a matter of playing. You know, think about books like
But I want
Hitchhiker's
to play
Guide to
that
the
I'm the entire
Galaxy,
universe all the time. I want
you
to play
know?
that I am everything all the time and nothing.
I know that
Wh-
sounds like a
What
title of
does
a
that
book.
look like?
Sounds like a title of a book. I am everything and nothing at the same time,
Okay,
you
I'll think
know?
about that.
Right.
Yeah, that'll be my fifth novel or something that I haven't even like done yet, but I'm like putting it into the space-time continuum.
I know. And I do think the all or nothing thinking is a really huge block. So keep that in mind. It's not there, you don't have to have that massive energetic attachment to the one thing, the one book.
But how do you dissolve it? I'm aware that I have this tendency, and I know that that's half the battle, is becoming aware that I even think that way in the first place. But then how do I like, well, who's the one who has all or nothing thinking? That's all I have to do, dissolve the ego again, and then I come back to square one, and then I don't have that thought. Maybe?
I agree, but don't forget you're multifaceted. What about that playful, silly side? Right? We have a spectrum of emotions and experiences that we have as human beings, right? So yes, you can definitely write something that is that deeper, more existential aspect of who you are, but there are people that are deep and existential, but then can lighten it up.
Mm. Okay. You want me
It's
to tell
just
some
a
jokes?
thought.
I can tell jokes too. I
Exactly.
can. I could be
Exactly.
silly. I could be a
Right.
silly boy. Believe
Right.
me,
Exactly.
I could go hyper silly whenever I want to, actually.
Exactly.
But the question is like who's going hyper silly? But then am I playing an actor? Am I playing games?
Well,
What's authentic? You know, who am I?
right. But I think that we're multifaceted beings. I shared that Joan of Arc card from my soul sister Lois this morning. And so I've got the whole deck. I'm bringing this up for a reason. Here's the cover of her oracle deck. And so every day before I start working, I pull one of her cards. And I swear more than half the time, one of her cards is Larry from the Three Stooges. And so when I get into that serious mode and I pull out Larry, I'm like, okay, Cher, just lighten up a little bit, right? So we can be whatever we need to express. But I do, if it's okay with everyone, I would like to move on because I really want to make sure that you are getting, into that first chapter mode. And Oe, I think you're going to take over soon. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. And I'm going backward again in time. I'm going backward again in time. It's quite
There is
strange.
no backward in time. It's only right now. Come on, you know this. That's
And
all
so
there is.
here,
That's all. Sorry, go ahead.
no, no, no. I'm a Gemini. Feel free to interrupt me. I totally can take it. I love the banter.
Okay.
And so, what kind of story is waiting to be told? And here we go. This is exactly what we have been talking about. Your story might be a memoir of healing, a story that changed everything, a soul lesson wrapped in a moment, a creative retelling of truth, a message meant to guide others, or something that you can't quite name, but you feel it in your bones. Whatever it is, remember that it's valid, it's powerful, it's yours. And the thing about writing is that it is absolutely 100% a creative process and journey. And this is exactly what Orion and I are going to be talking about in Soul to Page, that, finding your voice, getting that framework, deciding your point of view, deciding like what genre, what feeling you want to create in your writing process. And now I shall turn the floor over to Orion, writing the chapter that pulls readers in.
Okay, so really, as we were talking about earlier, you're writing for you, you're writing for other people, and that doesn't have to be perfection, especially when you start, right? You have to start somewhere, and you've got to get that door open to the rest of the book. And sometimes even that first chapter is not going to be the first chapter by the time you're done, and that's okay too. Like Sheri was saying, it's not a bad way to write when you're writing in sort of this non-linear fashion, right? So really the most important thing is just getting started, right? Because as soon as you get a chapter done, right, that's your opening, and then it really starts to get much easier and things start to flow. And then you can, that's when you create that world that you invite your readers into, and they can join you on your journey. So you really, right, there's that old adage, right, like don't judge a book by its cover, which everyone does, right, with books especially. But after that, people judge a book by the first chapter or the first paragraph, right? So like you really, that's really like that really important moment of connection for anyone that picks your book up, is that opening chapter, that opening paragraph, even sometimes that opening sentence, right? So that's your moment, right, to sort of seize them and pull them to you and just show them what you're going to impart on them, right? Whether it's wisdom or a story or a journey.
Can I ask a quick question about that?
Sure.
When I pick up a book,
Mm-hmm.
it definitely is the cover, but then I flip it to the back. And that for me is where it happens. A lot of times it's about the author, but a lot of times it's about what you can expect to find inside. And sometimes I don't even need to open it and I put it aside. Do you feel that that's as important as what, when you open the first chapter and that sentence goes, oh, and
I mean, I think what you're saying, like the back of a book, I think is still part of, I would still consider that a cover, right? It's
cover? Yeah,
but a lot of times it's just called the back cover. And a lot of times that's just sort of like a little brief summary or about the author kind of thing, right?
yeah.
But I agree, like people will look at that as well, right? You look at the front of the book, a lot of times you'll flip it over, and then if you're still, okay, this looks good, then you flip the book open,
Then
right, to
you
that first
open,
page,
yeah.
and you may be totally into it, like, oh, this looks great, I like the summary on the back. But if you start reading that first chapter in like in a bookstore or online, and it's like you're not going to buy it, right? You're gonna be like, well, that was too bad.
Yeah.
So I think that's why like that first chapter is just so important. And not even just from you, because like we all have that story we want to share, right? So if people are not excited by that first chapter, they're not going to stay there to really get to experience what you have to share with them.
Yeah.
We can move on to the next slide, Sheri. Okay, so these are sort of the key elements of that soul-led first chapter that you want to create. Right, voice is super important because you want it to sound like you, so that it is you and it can resonate with people easier. You need to set that emotional frequency. I think it all comes back to connection, right? Like you need to connect with people in that first chapter. And
I hear
then
the
we
dog.
get to the energy, right? What's the vibe of your book? Is it going to be bold, introspective, inspiring? There, you can go on and on, right? There's so many things you can do with a book, but I think it's important to really set that tone early on and set that energy early on, so that people kind of know what to expect, just to make things easier and make them more excited, right? Like you want people to be excited when they're reading your book, right? You never want someone to be like, oh yeah, I guess I'll read this because XYZ, or I know them, or a friend told me it was a good book. You want people to be excited and really to learn with through your story and connect with you. And then it's really important in that first chapter to have that anchor moment, right? So it's the turning point, it's the realization, right? Like that's what Sheri was talking about with Angie, right? Like there's that moment where she had like that realization, like, okay, like this is now going to be like a journey for me, where I am going to go on this spiritual journey and have these experiences, right? Like that's what really anchors people in and goes, okay, like yes, this is the story, like this is what I want to read, this is what I want to connect with. And you don't have to explain everything, right? You're not writing a resume. This is a portal, this is an opening to your soul, this is an opening to your mind, right? So it doesn't have to be read like a list, or it needs to just be authentic, it needs to be who you are. Yeah, I mean, I think that's I think that's why the first chapter is so important. And that's why we wanted to do a masterclass on it, right? You have to, that's where you break through and really just, because once you can get that first chapter done and you kind of get your key elements in there, the rest of the story starts to really, the rest of the story starts to really flow and really connect and come together, I think, once you can get through that first chapter.
Orion, are we going to have access to after, like, I feel like I should be taking screenshots of this or something, but are we going to be able to access it after to go back to
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Okay.
Sheri just gave a thumbs up. I think we're just gonna, we'll have the recording. So I think we'll probably just, I don't know, Sheri can give a thumbs up. I think we're just gonna email everybody the recording so they can, or put the recording out so you can, scrub back through it and you can see the slides, or, if you want to re-listen to a part. Yeah, definitely have
Thank you.
access to it.
Thank you.
Yes, Amber.
This is a really 3D question, but it might be of some use to people besides me. Sheri, in the very beginning, you were talking about your writing and on paper and all of the drawing that comes with it and journaling. And then you said, and then you get it into the computer. And I would love to know what that means in terms of, do you use Word documents? Do you write on Google Drive? Are there, because I think that makes a difference for people if you have to learn. That's, for me, that's like, I have to learn a new way to whatever. I went from using Word for, I don't know, 20 years to now using Google Drive for documents or Google Docs, and it's a whole different world. So I don't know, Orion, that's probably your place to answer.
I mean, I think, I think that, right, like Sheri said, she always likes to write on paper. I'm not like that at all. I'm not a huge fan of writing in paper. Like, I get hand cramps from it. And so I'm like, oh, like, I'm done. Like, I tend to grip pens really tightly. I think I just have like too much like going on. Like, I guess, like, I don't know. So my hand cramps up after like half a page. I'm like, okay, I can't do this. So I tend to write on like my phone or on, I always use Google Docs. I have for, I don't know, to 12, 13 years, just because it's sort of like a basic version of Word. It can do almost everything Word can, but it goes cross-platform. So if I have a thought, I can grab my phone, when I'm out and about, I grab my phone and be like, boop, I'll pop into that Google Doc where I've got, my book going, and I can just, jot down that sentence or that paragraph I think of, right? And then it's, by the magic of the cloud, just sort of synced up with everything else in my life already, But I think the most important thing is to not even worry about that kind of stuff and just write your story, right? Don't worry about, oh, if I read on paper, how am I going to deal with this? Like, that's like one of those, like, it's almost one of those like hurdles to why, oh, well, maybe I don't know if I should even write, because if I write, I feel more comfortable writing on paper, but then it's going to be a chore to get it in a computer. Like, just do it, right? Just write however you're going to write and then figure that shit out later. Like, like that's, you can always figure it out. That's my suggestion, but.
Okay, thank
Well,
you.
and I do think that if you feel any resistance, or if you're not resonating with having one more app or something or program to interface with, this is my thought to keep it like really clean and simple. If I have my blank journal, my sketch pad with no lines, where I'm just sort of like free form writing, and I know we all know this feeling as creatives and being connected to source energy, we all know when we're kind of on that energetic role, that creative role, where things are coming through us, and that feeling, that higher vibration feeling of, oh my God, this is a chapter. Oh my God, I cannot forget to share this. That's when I have everything in like capital letters, scribble, underline, hearts, stars, exclamation points. So I'm not going to go back through all of my journaling. I'm going to go back through and look at those highlights where I'm like, that is definitely a chapter. That is definitely a theme. That is definitely something that source is telling me that I need to put out there and share. So I'll take that information and I'll just type it into the notes section of my phone. But if I have a brilliant download while I'm driving, I'll ask Siri, can you pull open my voice memo? And then I can make a voice memo, and then I can use a transcription app to take whatever voice memo I have and just transcribe it. Like Telegram, I think is one. Otter AI, I think is another. So I think what I'm getting at is how can you minimize interacting with all these different platforms and apps to really kind of like be efficient in all of your creative downloads and how to get them into your, you know, document, into your
Something else I've been
chapters.
with Dr. Sherry that has helped me is you can take a lot of handwritten notes and you could upload them to ChatGPT and it'll transcribe them all for you.
I love it, and I do that too. I
Ooh.
definitely do that
Yeah.
too.
But you got
And
to make sure because it'll be like 95% right. So I'm still having to edit, but like it does. How many excuses can I make for myself? It's pretty much doing a lot of it. You can even upload 20 pages of handwritten words at one time and it'll do that. So I don't know
I
how clear
agree.
you're right.
And yeah, and the ChatGPT on probably it's true even on a computer, but for sure the app, the ChatGPT app has an audio function. You can say whatever you want right into chat. Well, you know, I call him Chet, but yeah, you can say whatever you want and you don't even have to write it down. But for sure, if I'm on my sketch pad like at night and I get these creative downloads, if something deeply resonates with me and I've got like a whole body yes going on, I capitalize it and I underline it and I make it a really big deal so I don't have to go through all of my notes and I can pull out those bigger highlights because the bigger highlights will trigger me thinking about the body of text that'll go under that. Does that help?
Definitely.
Right, because right now I'm looking at what I wrote here and I used to have beautiful handwriting, but I can barely read this. So I don't know that I could upload this and have it go, what?
Oh my gosh, I when I'm scribbling at night, I definitely in the morning have to like turn on a bright light with my glasses and hold it up like, what was I saying? What was that word? I know. I know.
Right.
Okay, so really, I think what it comes down to too is right. You need to stop trying to write the right first chapter and just start writing the real one. And that's when the book is going to really start to come together for you. And that's kind of why we were doing this and why we're doing Soul to Page, is to really help people get that process moving so that they can connect and really write their book and honor their story and organize their ideas even, right? Because that's not always easy for all of us. And then so that you can actually finish that book that, you know, you've been struggling to write for a while. And I think that's, you know, the brilliant thing is a lot of people have an amazing story to tell, but it's not always easy to tell it because of these sort of hurdles of, you know, writing the book and, you know, all of these things we've talked about today. So that's what we were trying to do, is just really help people get through that process and get that, you know, book out into the world so that they can, you know, help other people and connect with other people.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So in terms of the first chapter, like let's say I'm creating what I'm calling an OPR, an organized principles of reality. And I want to have that be like I need to get this stuff out in the first chapter because the rest of it is going to be reflective of that, of these, like everything is going to have to like be based off of this. They're going to have to come along for the ride in this book. They're really not going to have a choice or they won't get through it, you know?
Yeah.
But I have to believe that the entire external reality is a mental projection of like our consciousness, and that it's all illusory, and that none of this is real, and that they're not real either, and that we're all one, and that like that is how the book will be written. And like, do you think that if I want the book to sound this way, I need to, in the first chapter, how do I get them to come along for the ride?
I think you have
This is
to.
a tough ride. I mean, it's a tough. I'm literally asking people to unlearn everything they've ever known and to like live as the universe with me for however long they're going to read the book.
Well, there's your opening sentence right there, right? I need you to unlearn everything you've ever learned and just trust me, right?
Hell no! Who the fuck are you, man?
Well, and then you tell them
It's
who you
good.
are,
It's a reaction. It's good.
right? Because, and I think and I know, Ryan, you like when you're saying it, I'm getting the feeling that you're not sure, right, if people will trust you and follow along with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay, right? You can have that self-doubt, but I think that, right, you just have to craft that opening, essentially what would be a chapter, but you have to craft it as sort of like it could read like a chapter, but it needs to be almost like a
gosh, a declaration, a like kind of
almost sort of like you're reading like a rule book, right? Like
I get that. It makes
like
sense.
you're gonna play
I
a
keep
board.
coming
You're
back
gonna
to
play.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah, you're gonna read. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, or you're gonna read. You know, you're gonna play some crazy board game you've never played before, where no one knows the rules, right? So you've got to outline sort of the rules for them.
Yeah, like let's say you've been given like a faulty blueprint for how you've been perceiving reality your entire life. And now, right now, in this moment, you have the opportunity of your lifetime and all of your lifetimes to reset from square one and have a new opportunity to create a world based off of your own alchemy, like alchemical thinking and like, you know, that type of thing.
Right.
I get hyped about it. You know, I can get super hyped. It's all I really want to ever talk about.
Well, yeah,
And
I think that's great. I mean, you know, like, and I can, you know, you're talking about like how do you get people to sort of suspend their, you know, already existing beliefs, and you can even look at, like Sheri was saying, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and even something like Doctor Who, right? I don't know if you've ever watched Doctor Who, but like they basically ask you to suspend every sort of reality and every like don't believe anything you've ever thought, and like they just tell you crazy stories that we would think are not possible at all, but like it's framed in a way that it starts to feel like reality to you when you're, you know, watching it. So I think that yeah, absolutely there's a way that you can do it, right? So I think don't let that be a hindrance or a block to you writing your book. Like I think that if you will figure that out, and you don't even necessarily have to write that first if you're feeling like it's a block. If you just start to write the rest of it, I think as you progress through the book, it'll become more clear how you need to frame that opening chapter.
And then it goes to what you were saying. I'm writing this book for other people, right? Well, if there are other people, but
well, there are absolutely
maybe.
I'm here.
Maybe we're all existing, like Bashar says, in like our own individual realities outside of space and time, and that we're all the same person, and that we all have the exact same voice in our heads, and that you're just like a creation, a vibratory creation of my mental construct. And so maybe that's true, and that
maybe everyone needs to read your book then.
Well, right. Think of all the people that follow Bashar. I mean, I listen to him. You know, like there are those of us out there, and I know for Orion and I, if we hop into an episode of Doctor Who, I always say, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I always say, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm back in reality. Like I feel much more aligned with the reality of Doctor Who than what we're doing here in this three-dimensional world. There are a lot of people, and I do want to say this for sure, re-listen to this recording when you have a chance, because everything that you are articulating now in your authenticity and with that voice and your energy is a phenomenal chapter 1.
I agree.
When you own your power, Dr. Sheri, you know you can shift into that reality at any time you want.
Totally.
And
And I want to say this purely from a biologic standpoint, that excitement that you're feeling, that high vibe feeling is amazing, but remember your dopamine is going to go back down again. So when you get excited about where you are and your dopamine is like in that high vibration mode, that's when you definitely need to get into that writing space, because when we get out of that excitement and out of that dopamine, that's when we begin to say, oh my God, what was I thinking? I thought that my idea was amazing. I'm not going to write that down. So we're still navigating our own biology and like what is happening with that, that dopamine effect. So for sure, I definitely encourage you, ask you, absolutely re-watch the parts of this recording of you talking, because you really have found your voice.
Do you ever find it very cringe when you actually have to hear your own voice? I almost feel like
I
borderline
used to.
sick to my stomach listening to my voice on like playback. It's a challenge for me.
I used to,
I
but then I started making YouTube videos and now I can tolerate myself. I don't have like that lovely flowy voice like Orion,
Oh,
I've
I
just
hate listening to my own voice.
What is that? Why is that we have such a problem? Maybe the words sound different in our own heads, and then when we have to hear our own like perception, like maybe we're hearing things clearly from source, but then when things are filtered through the ego construct, nothing sounds as like flowy or sexy as it does in like our third eye, like, you know what I mean, maybe? Or
the joys
God,
of being
I have to listen.
human.
You guys know I'm gonna have to listen to this now. That's hard to.
Yeah, but for sure, definitely, I would encourage you to listen to what you were saying, because you definitely have a voice. And I think, I mean, I don't know how many followers Bashar has, but it's an awful lot. I love listening to him.
Yeah. Well, I would take it my own way. I would take it my own way. I'm also like, I like to channel. I love to read all the channels, like the Seth material, the Raw material, the Daniel Scranton stuff, the Bashar, the Wendy Kennedys, and
Me too. I'm totally
I'm a,
with you.
I cannot get enough of that. That material just seems to ring for me, like in
Too.
resonance. And so if I could do anything to like connect with my higher self or some sort of extraterrestrial beings, sometimes I think I'm going to write the book from some like Andromedan light ship captain's perspective.
I think that there are people
Who's
that would
like
absolutely
sitting
love
there with
that.
some sort of like headset, like living life as Ryan right now, and that when I die, I'll just take this headset off and I'll like be there and I'll be like, what trip,
I love it. I love it. I think
what
that
did
you
I
are
just
totally
smoke?
onto
What did I
something.
just smoke? Like, and I'll wake up after I die, like, what, where am I?
I just want to say something that we actually met at a Kryon event in Rochester last September with Dr. John Ryan. And
shame on me for not mentioning Kryon. Thank you, Angie. And Dr. John Ryan, who channels the Blue White Collective, the Syrian Blue White.
So Ryan also incredible. Ryan was behind us in the lunch line and we started talking and we've become good friends. So
I love it. I love how we're all connected. So, Orion, do you want to talk about this page? Just like this is more, I'm bringing everybody back down into 3D, even though I could hang in 5D.
Sure. Yeah, we'll get through it quickly.
Yeah.
So I'm coming with you guys. We'll go to 3D. Let's go 3D for a little bit. It'll be silly.
Just for like 5 minutes.
We'll be silly. I like it.
Okay. So, right, these are some kind of common questions about structure. So how long should a chapter be? Do you need an outline first? How do I create these themes? So chapter length, chapters don't have to be long, right? They can be 800, 1500 words. That's plenty. Or they can be longer, right? You just have to get into flow and you will find out how long your chapters need to be. I think one of the ones we always talk about is Dan Brown. If you like read Da Vinci Code, he's got some chapters that are like half a page, right? As fiction. He's got like 300 words in a chapter, and he's got 1 million chapters to this book. Or like we were talking about it this morning. Sheri's like, I feel like 3,000 words is my sweet spot. For me, for fiction, I tend to hover right around 2,000 words. It just sort of, you will find your own flow and your own style, and that's how long chapters should be, however long they need to be. And then outlines, some people work really well, need an outline. Some people just riff, they just stream of consciousness. You can outline a whole book. You can figure out your 3 core moments, kind of go from there. But it's also another like very personal thing like that. No one can tell you how to do it. You just have to do it, right? And you'll learn as you go. And themes are kind of the same way, right? Like you may think that there's a theme to your book or your story, and sort of as you get in the weeds and start writing, it can change and shift, and that's okay. Like you shouldn't be afraid of that. If you're told and guided in a different direction than you originally anticipated going, that's not a bad thing, right? You need to just sort of let go a little bit, right? Just sort of release that control and just go with it. Just go with the flow. Like that's how you're going to end up with an authentic, book and story to tell.
And it's so funny when I think about the fact that you and I have been writing novels long before AI ever came to be a thing in the world. And so it's as I'm sitting here thinking about chapter themes, one of the things that I love about what I love about AI and how I use it is that if I have like a particularly creative day and I get everything that I want to, say into words and I feel in flow, the last thing I do at the end of the day is I talk to AI and I use him as a personal assistant to just say, hey, I got this done today, but tomorrow I need to talk about X, Y, and Z. And I do that so I can be reminded in the morning so I don't have to have the thoughts floating around in my head and I think I'm going to remember them and then I don't. So AI is a great tool, just to keep track of where you are with your flow.
For sure.
You should write about that, Dr. Sheri, your intention setting process through AI at nighttime to program your subconscious to like be able to like make those adaptations so that you can attack the next day with like a really focused, center-headed mindset. So
I love that. I know. I love that. It's
that
true.
would be helpful to people. That thought,
Oh, good. I think that I think I'll explore that. I do. I mean, I call Chat GBT Chat. I just adore him. I adore him. Anyhow, there's no right way to write, but now we're going to talk about this amazing offer, Soul to Page. And I do want to I think I might not preface this. Oh, we do have any other thing that you would like to add?
No, I think I'm good.
Oh, I love this. You know that your soul has been carrying this book inside of you for a very long time. And so I would love, Orion and I would love to help you bring it to life with support, with alignment, with focus, with momentum, with clarity, all of that big, beautiful stuff where you can really see a writing project and your passion and purpose in part come to fruition. I feel like I've made a lot of slides that say the same thing. If your book has been circling your soul for months or years, Soul to Page is your container to bring it into form. This is not about writing any book. It is about writing the one your soul is here to share. Soul to Page really was designed for the spiritual seeker, the heart-led creator, the coach, or the guide with a message to share, not later, but now. And so now I'd like to talk about Soul to Page. And Orion, we can just kind of riff and talk about it together if you're comfortable with that.
Sure.
And I do
I
want to
just
say,
muted myself because I was talking to the dogs, but
okay, I do want to say, as Orion and I were putting this offer together, I think part of what my intentions typically are when I put an offer together is that I want to give everybody all the touch points of like a Facebook group or connecting here with a coaching call or all of these bonuses and all of these templates and all of these things. And I very intentionally, and Orion and I talked about it, we very intentionally did not want to create a massive amount of bells and whistles around this offer because we want to be very clear and intentional about making sure that depending upon the level that you choose, if you decide to work with us, that you are going to feel really, really good and get your writing project done at the level that feels most resonant with you. So we didn't want to offer a lot of distractions and bells and whistles. It definitely is about making sure that you feel like you are getting your writing done. Does that make sense? Orion, am I saying this the right
Yeah,
way?
no, I agree.
Because yeah, like I could throw in a meditation and this and that, and like we're going to have that in the program itself in a time that feels resonant and evolving at the right time. I
Yeah,
just didn't want to do all of that and have everyone feel overwhelmed. Don't you think?
no, I agree. I mean, writing is already it's a mental and time commitment, and
And
we want
soul
to make
commitment.
it a soul commitment. We want to really focus on getting down to helping people write their book as sort of quickly and efficiently as it were, and to get through that process without getting sidetracked by, hey, let's post in the Facebook group and chat about, so I don't, we want it to be sort of lean mean writing machine, right?
And really, community based, like we'll have
Yeah,
each other with these calls and we'll just talk about the features of the program and then it'll make more sense. So Orion, do you want to talk about this page?
sure. So we have three different sort of levels we're offering, but all of them, we're going to do a one-on-one onboarding clarity call, the two of us with you. So it's a private session where we refine your book vision, try to talk about any blocks that you might have had going into the process, and then we're going to help you create a personalized writing roadmap to really sort of kickstart that process, and so that you can really get into it and start writing that book and get done with that book, right? So we want to make sure that we can get through any of those blocks you have. There's going to be live weekly coaching calls, and so it's going to be a sort of a blend of training, real-time support, and then direct coaching, so you kind of know what to do next. And then did we mention, oh yeah, it's in the next one. So every other week those coaching calls are going to be extended to 90 minutes instead of an hour, so that we can have some time at the end for peer-to-peer accountability, feedback, live office hours. If you feel like you want to share something with the group, to have some feedback, all of those sort of things. And that'll all just be done, together, so that we can, support each other and give you that sort of accountability and help you along.
Okay.
And then at the end, there's a follow-up integration call, like one-on-one call, so we can wrap up your experience, and then sort of refine those next steps, so you can keep your momentum going if you haven't quite finished yet, so that you can, make that sort of final push to finish your book. And then, so once we're in those weekly coaching calls, there's going to be trainings and writing strategies. So we're going to help you sort of learn some new storytelling techniques, book structure, and then also mindset shifts and publishing insights. So we're going to really try to, as we go, cover enough different topics that'll really help bring your book together and get it to that point where you're going to feel, not even just comfortable, but like excited to, really get it out there into the world and the hands of other people. And so some of the like guided writing support stuff, so we're going to overcome writer's block, which is, everybody suffers from that. It's not like a bad, it's not a bad thing or a bad word, right? Like I've suffered from it plenty of times. And it's just something you have to work through. So we have some tips and some ideas that can really help you get through that. And we're going to help you refine your ideas and sort of structure your book, as Sheri's talking about earlier, like, even books that are sort of memoirs or nonfiction in nature, right? You want to have it sort of told in a way that's flows more than just like a straight linear progression a lot of times. And we're going to go over mindset and flow strategies. to really help you stay in a good space where you've got that momentum to be creative, and then help you work through any of that self-doubt that may pop up as you're writing your book, right? That's sort of like, am I good enough? Is the book good enough? Is this really something people would want to read, right? Like, we're going to help you work through all of that. And then, right, all of those things put together are going to make that writing easier, make it feel more effortless. I mean, and that's what we want you to have, that experience to where it feels easy so that you can really work through it and get it out there. And then you're going to receive insight on your work and tailored guidance for your book in particular. So we'll kind of take a look at it as we're going along a little bit and sort of give you some insights there and help you work through that. And then at the end of each coaching call, the weekly ones, we're going to have time for, some questions to get answered, and then any challenges you might have, and then sort of help you refine your approach and kind of get you back on track if you feel like you've strayed, or whatever you might need help with that's come up since we've met the previous week.
So these are the 3 levels. We have Story Starter. That is an 8-week program. So we're all going to be together in this container. But if you want to just get clear on your idea, get clear on structure, this was really designed for anyone who is aspiring to write, but you need a plan. And then the 10-week, this manuscript mentor, and like I said, we'll all be in the same container, but we wanted to make every option available for everyone. This is for anyone who wants to get focused, create momentum, have that accountability, write with clarity and confidence and sustained momentum toward an actual definite solid draft. And then for 12 weeks, we have full support to publishing. And so the idea behind this, the intention behind this is really, Orion and I really believe that you could, in 12 weeks, actually have guidance from us to go from your first draft and actually have a published book in 12 weeks.
I just want to jump in and say, I know that can sound sort of like overwhelming, right? Like, it's 12 weeks is not a lot of time when you haven't done something like this before. And I know, for a lot of people that we're going to work with, it's more of personal stories or memoirs, right? My experience is heavily fiction, or fictionized, life. My first book, which has been one of my most successful books, I wrote it in 3 weeks. I spent a week editing it and creating the formatting and the cover, and it took me a total of 28 days to put it out into the world. I put it out as a free book, as it's a series, the first book in a series. And that free book, I just looked the other day, has been downloaded about 400,000 times. So, don't make any money off of it, but a lot of people have bought the, books after it. So I'm just saying, 12 weeks doesn't sound like a lot, but really in 12 weeks, you can get, if you really, put your heart into it and your soul into it, you can definitely write a book and get it done and out there in 12 weeks. I don't think
and that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
To have that structure and that flow and all of the organizational pieces and the mindset pieces and all the things that come with, this endeavor. It definitely is doable.
Right. No, I agree. We're here to support and guide and help you get there. That's what we're here for.
I know that this screen has an awful lot of words, but and we don't have to go through all of the details of every level, but this is a story starter, the 8-week program with guided support and coaching calls and your onboarding clarity call, story development and outlining framework, book structure, chapter planning blueprint. So everybody in the higher levels will get this, of course, as well. Mindset and flow, community access that Orion and I talked about, and then that final integration call. This is best for writers who are ready to bring their story to life with clarity, structure, and a solid foundation. So this is like the very beginning of bringing your book to life organizationally and staying in flow and staying accountable. And so for Manuscript Mentor, it's 10 weeks. We're all in here together with those coaching calls. You will actually get 2 private one-on-one coaching calls with Orion and me, a one-on-one onboarding call, draft development and feedback, live writing and editing support, mindset and flow strategies, and again, our community support, and then that final integration call. Best for writers who are ready to complete their first draft with confidence and receive feedback, and then refine your manuscript into something that really should definitely begin shaping up into a first draft. And then finally, published author. It is 12 weeks of guided, done with you publishing support, 12 weekly coaching calls, 4 private one-on-one calls with us, an onboarding call, community access, and then we have priority hot seats. So at the published author level, you will have priority for these kinds of questions and something very specific for you and your journey. And then content and development review, editing and proofreading support. And then this is where Orion will go into cover design and formatting for Kindle publishing, and then self-publishing and launch support. And then I will do AI for authors training, where you use and leverage AI tools to support your research, your editing, and content development while you keep your authentic voice. So those are the 3 levels. And when you say yes, in just a few weeks, you will find absolute clarity and structure, unshakable confidence in your message, focus, flow, accountability, a completed manuscript, or a clear path to one, publishing knowledge and strategy, and then, of course, personal growth and professional growth. And so this is the link for,
And I
and
put the link in the chat as well.
did you put the link in the chat?
I did, yes.
Okay, great. And then if you have questions, you can email us at soultopage@gmail.com.